Thank you, everyone. Now I'd like to give a warm welcome to Mr. Marcus Eugene, whose story, Welcoming Party, presents a brilliant vignette in the Guantanamo Bay series. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Eugene.
Oh man, I couldn't sit still. I wish I was first, man, for real. I am fairly new to this class. This is my first story that I've written. When I heard about the prompt, I said, why not? Within this story, it is about a young man who's always in battle for his own survival. I title it Welcoming Party. The bumpy ride was not helping Pounds be any more comfortable with being on the plane. This being his first time in the air only made the trip more traumatizing. Growing up in a small city near Portland, Oregon, he's never been outside of his hometown. This would be the first time he sees what's behind the tall trees and mountains outside of the state. Since a young buck, he had to strive for himself, losing his mother at the age of 12 and his father being in and out of prison. He was put through the foster care system at an early age. For as long as he can remember, he's been taking care of himself. And by any means necessary, if he needs it, then he'll get it. Being convicted of 2 homicides and a string of armed bank robberies and ties to fraudulent cash all over the U.S. spoke for itself. And he would have got away with it if it wasn't for his childhood homie, Payday, who took a deal and turned on him. They haven't spoken since. With the 70-year-to-life sentence, he now has nothing but time to figure out where does he go from here. Running into his father in the county jail and being transferred on the same plane only irritated Pounds even further. His father was arrested back in 1994. They say he was actually the one who killed OJ's wife. Murder for hire. He was also suspected of being a serial bank robber and had ties to fraudulent cash. His father wanted to make up for lost time, but Pounds wasn't interested. On a plane filled with the most notorious convicts headed to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, in a second-to-last row from the back, Pounds peered out the window. He saw a volcano in the distance, erupting, lava shooting out like an exploding ketchup packet. It was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. We'll be experiencing some pretty bad turbulence. Everyone strap on your seatbelts, the pilot announced. His seatbelt was the least of his worries. What if the plane crashed while he was shackled to the seat in front of him? Got a fluttery feeling in his stomach and sat up straight. The lights flickered on and off. The plane took a sudden dive. Prepare for a crash landing, the pilot yelled. Cries of terror filled the plane. Boom! Pounds was awakened by a radiant beam of sunlight on his face. He pulled his hand away from a throbbing knot the size of a tangerine above his left eye, seeing the color of tomato sauce. His vision was cloudy, like looking through 2 big cotton balls. He was surprised to be on land. The plane seemed to have been split in 2. Pounds, confused and shocked, looked around and realized he was on a beach. Body parts and pieces of the plane were spread along the waterfront like D-Day in Normandy all over again. Through the piercing pain and the unbearable headache, it dawned on him that his chains were broken. He was no longer attached to anything. Freedom struck his mind. With a sore ankle, he hobbled to his feet. The sound of the radio chatter in the distance drew his attention to Officer Cheetos, a heavy-set, bald Hulk Hogan-looking guy who was aboard the plane. Pounds and Cheetos have not seen eye to eye. Now he seemed to be the only other person who survived the crash. Pounds watched Cheetos awakened by the sound of his radio, disoriented and confused. They made eye contact. Pounds knew he wasn't just going to walk away from this crash landing a free man. He needed to take the opportunity at hand. The pain in his ankle was like lightning bolts in a rainstorm, but that didn't stop him from rushing the guard before he can get to his feet. Pounds grabbed the closest weapon in reach, a piece of pipe broken off the seat of the plane. He moved towards Cheetos in an attempt to strike him with the pipe. The guard got to one knee and caught the pipe in midair, inches away from his head. The 2 men fought back and forth for the pipe. Now it seems only the strongest man will come out on top. Pounds felt the familiarity of being in conflict with the world, always in battle for his own survival, always on his own. Pow! The sound of a Glock 45 echoes across the beach. After a brief silence, Pounds looked in disbelief as the guard dropped to his knees and thudded to the ground. In the distance, Pounds saw his father, Jacob Johnson, a.k.a. JJ. Standing behind the smoking gun, he resembled R. Kelly, the bald version, only after child support took all of his money. Are you crazy? You just killed a cop, Pound shouted at his father. What were you going to do? Tie him up? JJ responds. I didn't need your help, JJ. I could have taken care of it myself, just as I've been doing since I was 13. Didn't need your help then, and I definitely don't need it now. Stop it, JJ replied. That broke Hulk Hogan-looking bastard was one knee away from putting you back in those cuffs. You really should be thanking me. Yeah, whatever. Pounds waved them off and proceeded in another direction. JJ followed. It seems to be an island, says JJ. Pounds replies. Wherever I'm at, I'm grabbing everything I can and getting lost before help arrives. Don't bother following me. This ain't no welcoming party. Pounds turned away from his father, the only other living person on the island as far as he knew, and he made the same decision he always made. He would make it on his own. Thank you. And up next is Kevin Sawyer. He is a San Francisco native. He currently holds a BA in mass communication, and he is working on his novel.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to San Quentin Rehabilitation Center. I titled this piece, Unlawful Flight. The crash of an airplane transporting convicts to Guantanamo Bay would benefit the prisoners if they could locate the flight data recorder. Prisoners focus more on tormenting the guards. Flight data recorders transmit a low signal to track the device, said Lloyd. It's why I tried to convince everyone we need to find it. Okay, yeah, I'm hip, said Danny Depp, who became known as Danny Death after his highly publicized trial and conviction as the Sundown Killer. Found it, said Lloyd. It'll buy us some time if I can disconnect the battery. Lloyd and Danny Death had nothing in common other than the shackles they shared during flight. Ash had spewed skyward from the eruption of an underwater volcano. The powdered rock clogged the plane's engines, forcing the 767 down on an uncharted island near the Gulf of Mexico. There was no passenger manifest as the plane carried convicts illegally outside the United States jurisdiction. No flight plan was filed with local air traffic control or the FAA. Only top members of the U.S. shadow government knew of the clandestine flight. These officials' secret tough-on-crime plan went down with the plane, its whereabouts unknown. No one knew if the prisoners or guards survived. Lloyd was a mechanical engineer who proclaimed his innocence. He did not trust Danny Death or the other convicts. Nevertheless, he needed Danny's help to get off the island. To have survived the untraceable crash was the break Lloyd needed. While the other prisoners played games of vengeance on guards, Lloyd and Danny Death gathered what was left of the plane's global positioning system, navigation equipment, and other electronics. They hid the devices as they built a raft in secrecy. Officer Morton was catching hell. He was a gung-ho ex-Marine who made it his personal mission to exact vengeance upon criminals he believed lacked patriotism, especially those accused of terrorism. How does it feel now that the rabbits got the gun? Slick Willie Sloan said to Morton as other prisoners beat him. Sloan was convicted of selling munitions and stolen M16s to the Sandinistas in the 1980s. He laughed as the ex-Marine received his comeuppance. Hands on the wall, you maggot, another prisoner shouted at Morton. The prisoners pretended to search him, but it was more of an excuse to rough him up. All Morton could do was grunt. There was irony between Morton and Slick Willie Sloan. As a lieutenant, Morton had been a helicopter pilot who had transported AK-47s to the Contra rebels to fight the Sandinistas in the 1980s. The weapons had been purchased from Iran using proceeds from the illicit sale of cocaine in North American cities, right about the time crack started to ravage black communities. Sloan and Morton were co-conspirators who worked on opposite sides of corrupt U.S. politicians and military officials. One side fought to oppose communism in the Western Hemisphere. The other side worked to advance its capitalistic interests. So-called patriot and pseudo-revolutionary, tethered by their own will and fate, they were diametrically opposed to each other's political philosophies. America had produced them both. Their close proximity to each other due to the crash juxtaposed their values. Both, however, had betrayed their government's constitution and the rights of a sovereign nation, but for different reasons. Government officials had run war game scenarios in preparation of such a disaster. A secret black budget operation funded a SEAL Team 6 assassination unit dispatched to locate the crash and clean up the mess. Its mission, to neutralize the situation by liquidating any survivors. The plane was no problem, as it had been stolen from Libya when the U.S. conspired to kill Muammar Gaddafi. Escape for some and death for others was imminent on the ill-fated flight. No criminal or cop could be allowed to divulge this American secret. Bombs and bullets build right-wing democracy, said the mole. Another prisoner on the flight, his real name was Ivan Stovakovich, a double agent who worked for Russia's KGB and the Pentagon. He pledged allegiance to neither. Shame on democracy, shame on communists, and death to capitalism, he said in his 1984 espionage trial. This, he said, will be remembered as the year of Orwell. Stovakovich knew each government's body of secrets. However, in the game of spy versus spy, U.S. paranoia of dissidents and adversaries dictated to trust no one, not even its own. This is SEAL Team 6, an encrypted radio transmission to AWAC said, "We've picked up a signal, we have a visual, requesting permission to fire."